Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P. Joe P. Zapia. With me today is Andrew Erickson, bringing that BPE, the Big Pod Energy. Matthew Friedman, our head of content at Fantasy Pros, and a great friend of the show, Sigmund Bloom from FantasyGuys. And today, we're going to put all the noise aside, all the double bluffs, all the rumors, all the innuendo, and we're going to get back to basis. We're just going to go back to one round. I know last week we did the 3 rounds. It was immaculate. It was a beautiful thing to behold. But now we're trying to refocus ourselves as we head up into the NFL draft. And obviously, we've got the NFL draft coverage coming up here live. That's right, live on Fantasy Pros and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/fantasypros. Make sure you subscribe right now. Pause this, subscribe. Okay, good. Now you're back. And now you can be a part of our draft coverage, not just Thursday night live during the draft, but Friday night as well. It's going to be absolutely spectacular. It's going to be all of us in there covering the draft the way you are watching it too, which is with a fantasy eye. So we're going to be taking care of that. Sigmund Bloom, I want to welcome you to the show, my friend. Everybody loves your work for years and years. I remember when I first started in this business, way back in the 2012, 2013 age or something to that effect. I would sit and listen to you and Bob Harris and Mike Dempsey as I waited for my show. I would get to the studio early just to listen to Sigmund Bloom talk because he was always a guest of the diehards. So this is fun for me to sit here and have you on the show with us today, my friend.
It's fun to be here. It's just great that there's so many of us that enjoy hearing the sound of our own voices and other people's voices, and so many of those people listening that tolerate us and let us do this and call it work, and maybe continue to return to this spot year after year in April and guess and look wrong as everybody else in 4 days.
In 4 days, or directly after the show, once a major
happens, sure.
And this is all useless. Andrew Erickson, you love the sound of your own voice. How's things going for you? Are you have you drafted yourself in and out of the first round, like 6 or 7 times just before the show this morning?
Oh, of course. I go through my daily routine. I figure out where I would go. I figure out that I would be the number 1 pick, and then I move on, have some breakfast, and move on with my day. So I'm excited. Draft week, 3 more sleeps to the draft, so can't wait.
3 more sleeps. And Matthew Friedman has, I believe, set a record for most wagers on an NFL draft. I saw him on Twitter putting that out there. It's very exciting. Who haven't you bet on yet for the NFL draft, Friedman? That's my question.
Honestly, this has been a slow draft. Last year, it was an exciting draft. There were lots of props that books posted. They posted them early in draft season. Last year was ridiculous. It was 298 bets on the draft last year. This year, I've pulled it back a little bit. I'm only at 73 bets on the draft. So,
wow.
I guess I've got some work to do if I want to break the record.
Yeah. Wow. That is not what we call big pod energy. So you're going to have to up it a little bit here. Now, as I said, we're just going to focus on the first round here. This is our 7th mock draft show, if you can believe it already. And we're going to go through pick by pick again and try to talk about the teams, who they're going to take and why. And we've had a lot of time to digest this. We've had months now that we've been talking about that. And I always think it's good to kind of circle back and make sure we're getting there. And before we do, I want to remind everybody, when you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/fantasypros, you can enter our contest for free at fantasypros.com/contest and win yourself an autographed Lamar Jackson jersey, thanks to our friends at pristineauction.com. All you have to do is take a screenshot of your subscription, pretty easy, and then go over to fantasypros.com/contest and sign up. It's just that easy. And all of a sudden, a Lamar Jackson jersey can be yours. What are you doing? Free stuff just for hanging out and watching the show, which you do anyway. And obviously not just the live stream, but all of our mock drafts, all of our podcasts, everything is on our YouTube channel. So subscribe today and click that little bell for the notifications, because our draft coverage is going to be fantastic. Talk about big pot energy. Oh my goodness. That's the big stream energy. That's a whole other kind of energy. So we are going to start today with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Andrew Erickson is going to make the first pick in the NFL draft in theory.
I'm going to go with Trayvon Walker from Georgia, not Aiden Hutchinson, because Trent Baalke, he loves his long arms. Like, that's his thing. You look at the percentile for Aiden Hutchinson, he is 7th percentile arm length. And you look at Trayvon Walker, it's 95th percentile. Like, you can do a quick Twitter search, Trent Baalke, long arms, and there will be a million players that he's connected to. Like, it's really a thing. And, it's been smoke that's been kind of blown out, in recent weeks with Trayvon Walker, but a lot of insiders have had it there, and now he's the betting favorite. So maybe that's just the books trying to get more action on Walker and not Hutchinson, which is probably more or less the likely case. But for this exercise, I'm going with Walker.
My only disappointment is you didn't make the pick in Trent Baalke voice, which I've grown to really enjoy over the years, which if you haven't heard Trent Baalke voice, Google that instead, because he sounds just like Marty Funkhauser from Curb Your Enthusiasm. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but he completely sounds like that. And I just want him to come up and make that first pick in that voice. But there you go, Trayvon Walker. So not the Aiden Hutchinson, one that we've seen a lot of consensus drafts, which brings us to our next pick here, the Detroit Lions. And Sigmund Bloom, our guest, gets to make this pick. And now Aiden Hutchinson is on the board. So where do you go?
Yeah. Before I make the pick, I want to say rest in peace to Bob Einstein, Super Dave, Marty Funkhauser.
Super Dave.
Since you mentioned him.
Fantastic.
I remember I had no supervision as a child, so I got to watch anything I could find. And I watched a lot of Super Dave. The pick is Aiden Hutchinson. And I really like how Andrew laid that out with why Walker would be the number one pick. I think even the pick at number 2 won't be an offensive tackle, but which might be the value here. But edge is also strong. I think with Kayvon Thibodeau on one side of the ledger here, you have a great edge rusher, a higher ceiling. But with Aiden Hutchinson, you have a wide skill set and you have the local interest. And there is something to getting people excited about the Lions again. I think Hutchinson will do that, keeping him in Michigan. He fits the program. He fits Dan Campbell. I think Walker going number 1 should set off celebrations for the Lions.
It should. Michigan will rejoice when the hometown boy, the edge rusher, returns or stays put, really, I should say, with the Detroit Lions at 2. So Trayvon Walker from Georgia, edge rusher 1 to the Jaguars. Edge rusher for Michigan, Aiden Hutchinson 2 to the Detroit Lions. That puts the Texans up with the 3rd pick. And Matthew Friedman, you are on the clock.
I think with obviously those top 2 guys going, they're the chalky guys to go in the top 2, kind of regardless of how it is that you order them. I think the draft really starts at number 3. You have the Texans who could go in so many different directions. They have needs all over the roster. If it's not Evan Neal, it's Ahmad Sauce Gardner. I'm still leaning towards offensive tackle. And then you can make the case Evan Neal versus Ikem Ekwonu, and I think it's a coin flip between those two. I prefer Neal. I think he's the cleaner prospect. He was a highly coveted 5-star recruit entering college. He started right away, started at right tackle, started at left tackle, started at guard. So he's got versatility. He's very polished. And the Texans, they need an offensive tackle. They need help at the position. They cut right tackle Marcus Cannon. Left tackle Laramie Tunsil has a potential out in 2023. And we're talking about with Evan Neal, a 3-year SEC starter. I mean, the guy I think is as clean as they come as a prospect. I am going to say I am tempted by Ahmad Gardner. There has been some serious steam with him as a potential number 3 pick over the past week. So when I do my next mock draft, I might have Ahmad Gardner going there. But right now, I still think it's offensive tackle, and I prefer Evan Neal. So that is where I'm going.
Doesn't it make sense also, Friedman, if you're the Texans, there's a good chance you're back towards the top of the draft again next year. And with it being a better quarterback class, kind of doing the inverse of what the Bengals did a few years ago, right? You take the quarterback and then you worry about the offensive line. You have an opportunity to take a great offensive lineman and then perhaps next year in that class, take the quarterback. So it was a little proactive in terms of their thinking too. It's not just the 2022 draft for the Texans. They're kind of looking at 23 also.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. And, I think Neal is – maybe he's not the top prospect in the class, but if he went number 1 overall, I don't think that would be a mistake. I have him a little bit above Ahmad Sauce Gardner.
All right, let's go to the Jets with the 4th pick after Evan Neal from Alabama goes 3 to the Texans. Andrew Erickson, you're picking for the Jets.
It's either going to be edge or wide receiver here, and whichever one they don't get, they're going to get with their other pick, later with the 10th pick overall. So I'm going to go edge here with Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon. We've gone through the whole cycle with Kayvon Thibodeau as well, where he doesn't like football. He didn't go to his coach's birthday party. All the narratives about Kayvon Thibodeau and him not being worth a top 5, top 10 pick. I think that we're all going to be, what do you know? He went top 5. Like we all kind of thought he was at the beginning of the entire pre-draft process. So the Jets have been connected to him throughout the pre-draft process. When he visited them a couple weeks back, all the reports were really positive, and it makes sense. You pair him with a guy like Carl Lawson coming off the injury, and Robert Saleh, what they did with the 49ers, where they just drafted guys in the first round on the defensive line every single season. And that defensive line just became unstoppable. So I think they really want to focus on building their defense from the inside out, not necessarily worrying about the cornerback position, but more or less, let's put some pass rush to try to stop some of these AFC teams.
In his defense, I heard they were serving flan instead of birthday cake at that party. So, I mean, I can't
Rice
blame him
Krispie
for that.
treats.
So, well, those are okay. I'm down with the Krispie treats. Kayvon Thibodeau, edge rusher from Oregon, going to the Jets at 4. You can tell we've been doing a lot of these. We're a little punchy today, and that's going to make for a great show. The New York Giants are up next at number 5, Sigmund Bloom. What are you giving to the Giants?
Yeah, and it's a mod Sauce Gardner, and this is going to be an unpredictable first round. I think that there's not a consensus, but I think that Gardner is a player that there is a consensus as the number 1 corner, and he matches up so well with James Bradbury. Well, a cutout of James Bradbury, who will either be released or traded because the Giants need his cap number off of the roster, and it just makes sense for the new regime to cycle him in. So Gardner, that is a long boundary corner who will be a lot cheaper than James Bradbury.
All right, so Ahmad Sauce Gardner, cornerback from Cincinnati, goes to the Giants at 5, and that puts the Carolina Panthers up at 6. A lot of ways you can go here, Friedman. So what's the choice?
All right, I am very down on this quarterback class. I don't think it's a historically bad class, but I do think it is pretty close to the 2013 class, which had E.J. Manuel and Geno Smith, right? People thought Geno Smith would be a first-round pick, dropped to the second round. It would not be a shock if we saw a number of quarterbacks that maybe could go in the top 10, or maybe people think in round 1 fall in the draft and fall to day 2. So Carolina Panthers, you look at their team, they obviously need a quarterback. Like Sam Darnold cannot be the guy. And yet Sam Darnold might end up being the guy, right? And if it's not Sam Darnold, they trade for a veteran, Jimmy Garoppolo, Baker Mayfield. I don't think they are going quarterback here. And so I'm going to give them an offensive tackle, someone to help protect whoever it is who's going to be quarterback, and that's Ikem Ekwonu. Getting Icky here at number 6, I think it's tremendous value. Playing tackle, if you needed to move him to guard for some reason, if you wanted to, wherever it is, he's a big body who can do lots of great things on the offensive line right away. I think he plays with the sexiest tape. Like I could watch highlights of him all day long, like pancaking multiple dudes on run blocking plays. I can see why the betting market has him as the favorite to be the number 1 offensive lineman drafted ahead of Evan Neal. I think Neal's a little bit cleaner as a prospect, but Icky is right up there with him. So getting him at number 6, I think this is a slam dunk pick.
Offensive tackle from NC State, Ikem Ekwonu to the Panthers at 6. That puts the Giants back up with another pick at 7. And Andrew Erickson, you're back up again for the Giants.
We're going to go back again with offensive tackle Charles Cross from Mississippi State. So, their left tackle spot is solid. With New York, they need a right tackle, which is why I've always been confused on, why it hasn't been Evan Neal as kind of the most popular player to go to the Giants, because of these 3 guys, the top 3 tackle prospects, he's the only one that's actually played an entire college season at right tackle. So, but obviously Evan Neal's off the board here, so I can't pick him. But Charles Cross, I think, can at least make the switch and play on the right side to help protect Daniel Jones.
The versatile Charles Cross, offensive tackle from Mississippi State, to the Giants at 7. That puts the Falcons up on the clock at 8. And Sigmund Bloom, you're up next.
And that's a receiver here at 8. I went back and forth between Jameson Williams and Garrett Wilson. Wilson may be a little bit chalkier, although I don't know if that's true. Maybe a few weeks ago it was, although I think the betting markets have moved with in concert with the idea that Jameson Williams could be the first receiver off the board. Anyway, I shouldn't be talking about Williams. I should be talking about Wilson. This team needs a wide receiver. They need 3 wide receivers or 4 wide receivers. So it just makes sense. We'll all sit up if the draft plays out this way. Are they going to take Malik Willis at 8? And I think that as Matt was hinting at, I think we're going to find out that when it comes down to it, these decision makers aren't going to be willing to stick their necks out for these quarterbacks, at least not in the top 12 or 15. And Atlanta will take a receiver, which has salary skyrocketing faster than quarterbacks or as fast. So it's still a wise pick to lock in that cost-controlled 5th year.
All right, so Garrett Wilson goes off the board, wide receiver from Ohio State, 8 to the Falcons. That puts the Seahawks at 9 with the pick they acquired from the Denver Broncos. Matthew Friedman, what are they going to do with that pick?
With the Seahawks, they could do anything. I mean, they're always the wild card in every draft. And then now, especially that they have a top 10 pick in a draft that is really unpredictable at the top, who knows what they do? They could take Boye Mafe, they could do anything. But I'm going to try to be reasonable here and say that they take Derek Stingley, cornerback out of LSU. One thing that is so fascinating with the Seahawks is that, I mean, you look at the roster, they need a quarterback. Obviously, they just traded away a Hall of Fame quarterback. They need one. And I don't think they're going to take one at the top of the draft. Todd McShay on a podcast of First Draft earlier in April kind of went out of his way to highlight what he was seeing at the pro days of the top quarterbacks, talking about all the different teams that were sending people, who they were sending. And he noted that the Seahawks didn't send anyone to any of the pro days for the top quarterbacks. And 10 years ago, 2012, when they needed a quarterback, they sent everyone to all of the pro days for the quarterbacks. So I don't think they're going to take a quarterback, at least with a premium pick in this draft. Maybe on day 2, they take a quarterback. I don't think they do it in day 1. So you start looking at the other positions, and cornerback is a need on that team. And Derek Stingley, he had a fantastic true freshman season a few years ago. He had a great pro day. There's been some serious buzz about him being a lock for the top 10. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I think he's got a very good chance to go in the top 10. So I'm giving him to the Seattle Seahawks here.
All right, Derek Stingley, corner from LSU at 9 to the Seahawks. That puts the Jets up again for their second pick in the top 10. And Andrew Erickson, you're making that pick.
Doesn't matter who I pick for or whatever, where I end up going in the mock draft, but Jameson Williams always finds his way to being the guy I pick. So I'm going to go with Jameson Williams, wide receiver from Alabama to the New York Jets. A report came out earlier that, some wide receiver coach was talking about how Jameson Williams has Tyreek Hill speed. Oh, who was trying to get Tyreek Hill in trade? Oh, the New York Jets were, but they lost out to the Miami Dolphins. So I think this is the guy that they're trying to hone in on. I know that Drake London was a popular pick for them earlier in the offseason, but all the buzz is about how everybody wants Jameson Williams. And I honestly would not be surprised if they take Jameson Williams at 4. And they just you know what? If we miss out on Thibodeau, so be it. We're not going to miss out on Jameson Williams because they need to prioritize Zach Wilson and his development more or less than the defense. So I could see him literally going top 5 as well, but we'll take him at 10 here.
You're like that Jay Cutler meme with the cigarette. You're like Jameson Whiskey, Jameson Crowder, Jameson Williams. That's all I know. All I know is Jameson Williams. That's every time you get a pick, somehow you end up with him. So the top 10 go Trayvon Walker at 1 from Georgia to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and edge rusher Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan to the Detroit Lions at 2. The Houston Texans select Evan Neal, offensive tackle from Alabama at 3. The Jets at 4 take Kayvon Thibodeau, edge rusher from Oregon. Then Cincinnati's corner Ahmad Sauce Gardner to the Giants at 5. The Panthers at 6 select Ike Ekwonu, offensive tackle from NC State. Mississippi State's versatile offensive tackle Charles Cross to the Giants at 7. Then the Atlanta Falcons at 8 take Garrett Wilson, wide receiver from Ohio State. Seattle Seahawks select Derek Stingley, corner from LSU, and then the Jets take Jameson Williams, wide receiver from Alabama. That puts the Washington Commanders up next, and Sigmund Bloom up for 11.
And what makes this pick so interesting is what's your approach to a draft when you don't know who the owner of the team is going to be next year, right? I mean, this is a team that has a big shadow over it right now. And because of that, the Carson Wentz trade, a bit of a head scratcher. Here they are with Willis and Pickett both staring at them. And I think that that's a bold move for a team that could be going through a lot of transition. And I think this is just one where need and best player available fall into place for Washington here as they get Kyle Hamilton. And I think he may be the best player in this draft. But safety, positional value is something that the NFL continues to show us, unless you're Seattle. The Jets kind of learned their lesson, but I think 11 is a great pick for Hamilton. And this is a team that has a big hole at safety. They have the 4 first-round defensive linemen. You have somebody back there that can make plays and harvest some of that externality, some of the chaos that those guys create. So it'd be a perfect pick for them. And I think there's at least a 50-50 shot he's there for them.
Kyle Hamilton, safety from Notre Dame, the perfect fit for the Commanders at 11. That puts the Minnesota Vikings up, who could use some defensive help. Matthew Friedman, where do they start?
I'm looking at Trent McDuffie, cornerback out of Washington. If Kyle Hamilton had been available at number 12, I think there's a case to be made there for drafting him. But, Sig takes Hamilton, snipes him away, and, the Vikings go to the next player on the board. They need help in that secondary, whether it's safety, whether it's cornerback, they just need help in general. And McDuffie has been moving up draft boards with Derek Stingley being pushed into the top 10. And so McDuffie, I don't think he's in that same tier with Stingley and Gardner, but I think he's pretty clearly a tier above Andrew Booth Jr. and some of the other cornerbacks who are occasionally mocked into the first round. So I like getting him here. And the Vikings need help. They let starting cornerback Mackenzie Alexander walk away in free agency. Patrick Peterson is on a 1-year deal, and he's in his 30s. McDuffie is a consensus first rounder, true junior with 3 years of starting experience in the Pac-12. I think he starts week 1 for the Vikings if they draft him here.
The corner from Washington, Trent McDuffie, to the Vikings at 12. The Houston Texans are up next at 13. And Andrew Erickson, you're making the pick.
Yeah, so the Texans obviously need help pretty much everywhere. Like they're really not set at any position except they're pretty good at tackle now. They got Evan Neal and Laramie Tunsil, so they're upset on the offensive line. So I think they end up going with defense because they don't have. I mean, their defense was one of the worst last year, 31st in terms of yards per play allowed, and they just need to pick just good players. At this point they're rebuilding. So especially with Lovie Smith taking over as the head coach, you want to have a defense with playmakers around, and I think that Jermaine Johnson is the guy there from Florida State. He had just as many sacks last year as Aiden Hutchinson did. He was someone that just dominated at the Senior Bowl. And obviously, he was on this Georgia team and couldn't get on it. So he had to transfer to show how good he actually was. So similar to the Jameson Williams factor, where he came from Ohio State, couldn't get on the field, went to another great school, Alabama, and showed out. So I think that Jermaine Johnson, I think that he's actually going late in this draft. And the fact that he fell to the Houston Texans at 13, I think they're running this pick in.
A great value there, edge rusher from Florida State, Jermaine Johnson, to the Houston Texans at 13. That puts the Ravens up and Sigmund Bloom with the 14th pick.
Just a couple of notes about a few previous picks. On Washington, really quick, while we're recording, Martin Mayhew says that he doesn't expect them to use the 6 picks at the end of the draft that they have. So they want to trade down for 11. Would Kyle Hamilton be compelling enough to not trade? As anyone that wants to trade up to 11? I don't know. And then real quickly about Jermaine Johnson, I was talking to Dane Brugler this morning on my show, and he said that he expects 7 of the top 75 picks will be Georgia defenders. And I mean, Jermaine Johnson would make that 8, right? Which is just, I can't think of another scenario like that. I mean, let's just take that in for a second. Taking in the 14th pick here, this is one I think that's becoming more popular as we get closer to the draft. It makes a lot of sense. And the Ravens just take good players, right? They're not going to look at position value. They're not going to necessarily be forced by need, although there is a need at middle linebacker. Devin Lloyd is a 21st century defensive player. He can blitz. He can drop into coverage. He can be the backbone of this defense, and it's needed. Patrick Queen he's been okay, but not been quite the impact player. There's always the shadow of Ray Lewis, right? You're always coming in and playing in the shadow of Ray Lewis. But I think this is a player that can occupy Ray Lewis's spot in a way that will make Ravens fans happy. And again, it's just a nice intersection of need and best player available.
Yeah, Queen had a down year, especially the first half last year. But Devin Lloyd, the consensus #1 linebacker from Utah, going to the Ravens at 14, certainly a value. At 15, this is the first of the Eagles picks here coming up. Matthew Friedman, certainly a few needs there, very glaring ones. So where do you want to start?
I'm going with Drake London, wide receiver out of USC. The Eagles, I mean, it'll be the 3rd year in a row they draft a wide receiver in the first round, but they need to because Jalen Reagor did not work out, and hopefully they get it.
First, you don't succeed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hopefully they get it right with this pick. I think he's going to be a pretty strong running mate along Devontae Smith. He's got the production. Last year played in only 8 games, but he had over 1,000 yards receiving. He's got the size, 6'4", 219 pounds. So I think he's a good complement with Devontae Smith. I think he's got the potential to be a Mike Williams type of downfield dominator on the perimeter. And they can move Smith around the formation, put him in the slot, put him across on the other side on the perimeter. So I think London is a pretty good fit for that offense in general. And, it gives Jalen Hurts another big weapon to throw to and someone who can turn some of those, contested catches into receptions.
And they got a spot open because Arcega Whiteside is a tight end now. So
exactly. Yeah.
That's right. Hey, we got to slow down. These got to start making these wide receivers other positions. What can you play? Can you play safety? Go out there, get a helmet, kid. Drake London, wide receiver from USC, goes at 15 to the Eagles. We'll take a quick break here in the action to tell you about the 1-1 of breakfast cereals, and that's Magic Spoon. If you're going to start building a team, you got to think about also building your day and your meal plan. It all starts with Magic Spoon. It's delicious. It's good for you also because it's got 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein. That's a lot of protein. That's like Andrew Erickson amount of protein right there. And only 4 net grams of carbs. This is what Andrew eats every day before he goes to the gym. That's why he's so ripped. It's only 140 calories also. It's keto friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low carb, but it tastes delicious. And you can build your own box right now at magicspoon.com. And they've got all kinds of different flavors. They've got cocoa, they've got fruity, frosted, peanut butter, cookies and cream, Matthew Friedman's favorite, maple waffle. We all know Matthew loves the waffles, blueberry, cinnamon, and just now they're bringing back honey nut. It's a reformulated honey nut flavor that's going to knock your socks off. So what are you waiting for? Go to magicspoon.com/fantasypros. Again, that's magicspoon.com/fantasypros right now. And use that promo code FantasyPros to get $5 off your order. Make your own bundle. Start breakfast off right. Build your franchise. Sometimes you gotta build in the trenches. You gotta build your daily routine in the bowl. And it's the bowl of Magic Spoon, not that bowl. Get your head out of the gutter. It's talking about Magic Spoon. So start off right now. Again, that promo code is FantasyPros. Save $5 on us at magicspoon.com. All right, gentlemen, let's get back to the action here. And let's start with the next pick, which is the New Orleans Saints at 16. And Andrew Erickson, you're on the clock.
Going to go with Trevor Penning, offensive tackle from Northern Iowa. The Saints lost Teron Armstead this offseason to the Miami Dolphins, and they need a tackle. I think that one of their main goals out of this draft and getting that extra pick in the first round is to really fill in that tackle position. So I think Trevor Penning, who's seen his stock rise since the Senior Bowl, seems like everyone really likes him a lot. Really good in the run game. I think he'll be effective to help protect the blind side for Jameis Winston.
All right, Trevor Penning, nasty offensive tackle from Northern Iowa. Love that guy so much. The Chargers take that number 17 next. They've got the pick, and Sigmund Bloom, you're on the clock.
Chargers a bit charmed. Last year having Slater fall to them a few years back, Derwin James, getting value out of these mid-first round picks. And Penning would have certainly been a consideration. They need a tackle to go along with Slater, but they would be just as happy to take Jordan Davis. And as you said, Joe, leading into the show, they need 2 defensive tackles. How about 1.5? And I'll just say this about it. It was an excellent way to encapsulate why this pick makes a lot of sense. And also, I don't care how many snaps Jordan Davis played. If he's going to impact the game on half of the snaps, then that's what a first-round pick is for. And I think especially in this day and age when so many teams, look at the division they're in, right? You're going to be facing Russell Wilson twice. You're going to be facing Patrick Mahomes twice. The new wave is to drop 8 and make the quarterback take what the defense gives you or induce the team to run. So being able to stop the run with a 3-man front and maybe generate some pressure, maybe be able to at least collapse the pocket and disrupt the play. These are things that Jordan Davis can do, and the Chargers should be thrilled if they can get him.
Some fantastic reasoning behind that pick, too. Absolutely love this. Jordan Davis, defensive tackle from Georgia to the Chargers at 17. And Sigmund said they continue to take advantage of these mid-round picks they get. Let's go to the Eagles back up again. And Matthew Friedman, this is their second pick. They've already taken Drake London, the wide receiver. Now what do you do next with 18?
I hate this situation. If I were the Eagles at 18, and you look at the mock drafts that are out there, Devin Lloyd is sometimes going to them at number 18. Sometimes Jordan Davis is a guy that they take with some of their picks. Sometimes they go cornerback. But you look at the board and try to kind of think about the values of the players available at this point. And there aren't players at those positions that I really feel comfortable with at 18. Linebacker, it's too early. I think it's far too early for Dean. You look at cornerback, I think it's too early for Andrew Booth. You look at defensive tackle, I think it's too early for Devontae White. And so I'm in this position of thinking, all right, well, I have seen them take some edge rushers in some mocks. And, the value with George Karlaftis, I think it's about right. I think out of the players available on the board, and I'm not going to double dip at wide receiver or anything like that. So out of the guys available at the board who hit some positions where you could say, yeah, there's a little bit of a need there, I think Karlaftis is the guy that I feel the most comfortable going with. He's a first team all Big Ten 3-year starter with NFL athleticism and power. I think this is roughly the range in which he should be going. You could see him, maybe go as high as number 14 to the Ravens, as low as maybe number 23 to the Cardinals. Maybe he falls to number 28 to the Packers, but I think this is the general range. So I don't love the pick, but I think it fits.
All right, George Karlaftis, edge rusher from Purdue, to the Eagles at 18. That puts the Saints up for their second pick in the first round, and Andrew Erickson has the pick.
Going to go with Chris Olave, wide receiver from Ohio State. Longtime GM Mickey Loomis has really had no issues like spending a lot of draft capital at the wide receiver position for the New Orleans Saints. So I think that pairing him with fellow Buckeye Michael Thomas makes a lot of sense. And you look at Olave, someone that is a deep separator, can really get open down the field, really complement Michael Thomas underneath. I think it's a really great fit, and I think it fits well with Jameis Winston.
All right, so Winston gets another toy here. Chris Olave, wide receiver from Ohio State at 19. That puts the Pittsburgh Steelers up at 20. And Sigmund Bloom, another team that can go a lot of different ways with this pick. So which way would you want them to go?
Yeah, it'll be meaningful because it will say something about what they think about their ability to compete this year. And like those Saints picks we just talked about, those picks signify that they want to compete now, that they didn't make that trade. And to touch on what the Oracle was saying, you can see why the Eagles would have preemptively traded one of those 3 first-round picks because of that feeling that he got to just having a second first-round pick in that range. So everything works out with that trade. It makes a lot of sense. It makes sense for the Steelers to take Malik Willis, the quarterback, out of Liberty here. And this is a reasonable price, right? The number 20 pick, he's not necessarily going to be anointed the savior. There's not going to be a lot of pressure for him to play year one. Mike Tomlin's been on the record about wanting athleticism at quarterback. Again, you look at this division, Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow, and of course, Lamar Jackson. You need to compete with that. And I think that this is a chance they will get where the structure's in place on the defense, the culture. Malik Willis, by all accounts, is A-plus character, football character guy. It's just a huge unknown of how his game is going to translate. What's his process, even at quarterback? I think it's in process. It's under construction. You give him a year. Everything you do to make this offense work for Mitchell Trubisky transitions perfectly to Malik Willis's first year as a starter. And I hope that it would be a pick that would be met with a lot of optimism for the Steelers. Hopefully it will be like in 2003, 2004. My brain, Swiss cheese. Anyway, when they got Ben Roethlisberger, it was a chain of events. That was the Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers draft. And it just happened that so many teams in front of them had Michael Vick or Byron Leftwich or Derek Carr, so that Roethlisberger just fell. And maybe he shouldn't have. Also, another reason that Roethlisberger fell is he was a junior. And at that time, taking underclass quarterbacks was actually kind of unorthodox, taking them that high. So in this case, I think it's the quality, the lack of quality at the top of the quarterback class. And Willis, with that big boom bust, they're in a position to take on that risk and hopefully harvest the reward.
All right. For their first round quarterback since 2004, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Mike Tomlin's man crush, Malik Willis from Liberty. That puts the New England Patriots up on the clock next. And Matthew Friedman, it's your selection.
I'm going with Zion Johnson, guard from Boston College. It feels like a Bill Belichick kind of pick. But, the Patriots, the interior of the offensive line, it's a little thin, right? They lost guard Ted Karras in free agency. They traded away guard Shaq Mason. They need bodies in the middle of the offensive line. And Johnson, he's got good athleticism, especially for his size, 6'3", 312 pounds. He's got some versatility. He's played guard. He's played tackle. I believe at Senior Bowl, they had him take some snaps at center. So he's got some versatility, and that feels like the kind of thing that Bill Belichick would value. But even if they think, okay, we don't really care if he's got the versatility, he's just a guard, I think even that on its own, with his athleticism and his ability, that's enough still to warrant taking him. And he's going in the first round. Like with his talent, he's a near lock for the first round. This fits the draft range. I really like this pick.
Feels like a Patriots pick. Boston College guard Zion Johnson to the Pats at 21. At 22, the Green Bay Packers and Andrew Erickson have control of the board.
We're going wide receiver. For the first time ever, Aaron Rodgers is going to get a wide receiver in round one. I'm going to give him Yak God, Treylon Burks from Arkansas. You look at the comparison between a guy. I know that Treylon Burks gets a lot of Debo comps, but if you look at the way that the Packers use Devontae Adams in that offense, they move him in the slot a lot. They give him a lot of designed where he's just catching the ball behind the line of scrimmage and then running out for yardage. Like, this is the best spot, I think, for Treylon Burks, not even from like a real life perspective, from like a fantasy perspective. Like, I think it's a really good spot for him. Not a lot of competition. He can step in from day one and potentially be the target leader on this offense. So I think that with Treylon Burks and his yards after the catch ability, 92nd percentile in terms of yards after the catch per reception over the last 2 years among prospects. And the Green Bay Packers last year were third in yards after the catch. So it's part of their offense, and I think that Burks, exemplifies it the best way.
All right, there you have it. Let's recap the last 10 picks or so. Washington Commanders at 11 selects safety from Notre Dame, Kyle Hamilton. Then Trent McDuffie, corner from Washington, goes to the Minnesota Vikings at 12. At 13, Houston Texans select Jermaine Johnson, edge rusher from Florida. Then linebacker from Utah, Devin Lloyd, to the Ravens at 14. At 15, the Eagles select wide receiver Drake London from USC. Then Trevor Penning, offensive tackle from Northern Iowa, to the Saints at 16. The Chargers at 17 take the big boy Jordan Davis, defensive tackle from Georgia. Then George Karlaftis, edge rusher from Purdue, goes to the Eagles at 18. I could feel the YouTube comments already from all the Eagles fans on that one. At 19, New Orleans selects Chris Olave, wide receiver from The Ohio State. Then Malik Willis, the quarterback from Liberty, to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 20. The Pats select Zion Johnson, guard from Boston College, at 21. And then the Packers select Treylon Burks, wide receiver from Arkansas. Real quick, Andrew Erickson, in redraft formats with so much pressure on the Packers, obviously, to come back and be good again, but without Devontae Adams, how significant is Treylon Burks' addition to this wide receiving core that's obviously pretty bereft of talent right now? What's the impact of Treylon Burks in redraft leagues?
Like him specifically, or like Aaron Rodgers?
In this, him specifically with Rodgers, if this should happen.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely puts Treylon Burks on the radar to be one of these rookie wide receivers that actually matters, because we see a lot of these rookie wide receivers come in and do nothing. We see a lot of them, Jefferson and Chase, last 2 years have just absolutely blown up. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think that those guys were just, way above where Burks is coming out as a prospect. So if that's like the asking price and people are expecting that, that's like, okay, like I'm probably not going to be worth paying up that much for, again, as good as we talked about Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, it took like 3 years for Devontae Adams to get good. Like, it wasn't like, oh, day one, this is perfect. It was like, hey, Devontae Adams is like a bust after the first 2 years. So I think that there's going to be some growing pains between Burks and Rodgers. I think it's going to be a situation where I may be out on Burks, like in redraft, in draft season, wait till, people give up on him. He's like, oh, it's not going to work. He's a bust. He's too slow, et cetera, et cetera. And then, what do you know? Rodgers, they connect. Midway through the season, and you pick him up, you buy him low. So that's kind of how I'm viewing the situation, at least right now.
All right, very good. At 23, the Arizona Cardinals will up next, and that puts Sigmund Bloom back on the clock.
And I want to say, going back to something you just said, if there's a fan base, and I say this out of love, that needs collective therapy, it is the Eagles fan base.
Yes, it is.
So hopefully we can start to work some of these issues out. A couple of storylines intersect here at the Arizona pick, some of them echoing the pick of Burks at 22, which is wide receivers, also the salaries locking in that 5th-year cost-controlled option. I think we may see 7 wide receivers go off the board in the first round. And then, again, linking back to Burks, what are you going to do for your quarterback? It's not getting a ton of attention, but Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, not happy. Not a lot of good vibes coming from this situation. And most accounts you'll hear will say the Murray camp wanted to coordinate and say, hey, let's make a push. We can structure a contract so that we can go after some guys and make a run. And they weren't met with the same willingness to collaborate. What are they going to do? We could see Murray hold out into training camp, maybe even into the season if they don't sign him. I don't think he's going to play under his rookie contract. But this may be the first olive branch, taking a wide receiver, Jahan Dotson, out of Penn State, a good high floor prospect who this team needs wide receivers now. I don't know that Rondale Moore is going to work out as a true receiver. I don't know if it was really that promising, honestly, what we saw from him in his rookie year. So it won't be surprising to see them go back to the well here. Dotson's a nice, safe pick, and at least a sign that they're going to try to make this happen with Kyler Murray.
Jahan Dotson, wide receiver from Penn State, to the Arizona Cardinals at 23. Then 24, the Dallas Cowboys. Matthew Friedman, they've had a history of BPA. So what's their BPA at 24?
I love Kenyon Green, guard, Texas A&M, in this spot for the Dallas Cowboys. Right tackle, Al Collins, and left guard, Connor Williams, no longer with the Cowboys. And left tackle, Tyron Smith, has missed 20 games over the past 2 years. So they need someone on the offensive line. And Green, he's got a ton of potential. He's a 3-year SEC starter, 5-star recruitment pedigree. Terrific plug and play right away as a replacement for Williams. And I think he's got the added upside with the long-term potential to kick outside as a tackle. Like, that's not highly likely to happen, but I think he has the potential just because of how clean he is with his technique. He's played as a guard, but there's significant potential here. So I love Kenyon Green going to the Dallas Cowboys. They're highly slotted with guards in a lot of the mocks that you see. So this is very much in keeping, and it fits the draft range for Kenyon Green.
Texas A&M guard Kenyon Green to the Cowboys at 24. Now the Bills are up at 25. Andrew Erickson. We always talk about the luxury pick. So they go luxury pick here or something else. Best player available. Where do you go?
They're drafting Breece Hall. It's happening. And this isn't even me trying to guess. Like, it's happening. Like, they're going to draft Iowa State running back Breece Hall because that's what these teams do. They think that they're all set. We see the Chiefs do it. Patriots do it. Like, it's not smart, but they do it anyway. And I think that's what the Bills are going to do here. They were connected so strongly last year to Travis Etienne, and Urban Meyer, he took him away. Like that, like he took him away. The Bills would have taken Etienne in the first round last year if he had fallen to them. He didn't, and the Bills are not going to let that happen again because you look at all the other teams that pick in the second round. There's so many running back needy teams that, like the Texans, like Breece Hall's not going to get through those guys, those teams. So I think he's the pick here. They're going to upgrade from Singletary, from Zach Moss, these more like plodding running backs, and get an explosive pass catching back and play on all three downs, and in their mind take them to the next level. So, and for fantasy, he's the 101 in regular dynasty leagues and Superflex, in my opinion. Even if Malik Willis goes to the Steelers, I think that he's still the 101.
Joe,
all right, wow.
I gotta jump.
Yes.
I gotta jump in here.
Oh,
Erickson,
please! I can't wait.
What do you think the odds are in terms of like percentage? The odds that Breece Hall goes in the first round? Would you say? Because I mean, you're very confident here that he's going to the Bills, but obviously you can't be 100% confident. So somewhere on the scale of 0 to 100%, where are you that he goes in round one?
I would
tread
say
carefully, Erickson. This is a huge trap. Can you tell by the way he's setting it up what a trap this is for you? Go ahead. Walk right into it.
I would estimate that my confidence level is 70%.
That is so outrageous. That is so outrageous. We need to bet on this. And I hate saying this.
There we go. Now we're up to 78. That's 78 wagers we're up to. What was the original 75? Where were you?
It's I think I'm at 72, 73 right now.
Okay, 73.
Because I'm going to go out of my way to lose money on this because it will happen. It will happen. But this is, to say that it's 70% probability, that is so ridiculous. Especially this late in the draft. This late in round one. Anyway, but
go ahead, Erickson, make the counterpoint. Go for it.
You are right that he is the 101. Regardless of whatever team he goes to, he's the 101.
Yeah.
Erickson, what else would the Bills do here with this pick in theory? If they didn't take Breece Hall, what would you put for them? I
mean, they could draft a cornerback. But I know that they kind of like Dane Jackson, I think, is the other guy that's filling in for the guy that they lost on the outside. But, you talked about Andrew Booth. He's hurt, right? He has a sports hernia. Like, they don't even know if he's going to go in the first round. Kyrie Elam is probably the other guy that I would consider here. I don't know if he might be coming up in some of the future picks. But, no, I just think that we see this all the time with teams. Like, at the end of the first round, the teams that are, like, on the Super Bowl cusp, take a running back.
You ain't wrong.
It's like,
I love it.
So
I can't wait for Thursday to see when this Bills pick comes up. It's going to be so much fun. All right. Make sure Erickson is on and make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel for when pick 25 pops up. Let's go to the Tennessee Titans next at 26. Sigmund Bloom, you're up on the clock.
Looking ahead, this could be a team, they feel like they're in a Super Bowl window and the AFC is stacked, but a chance to take the heir to Ryan Tannehill. Didn't you feel it, guys? During the Bengals win over the Titans, a ripple, the wind said, Ryan Tannehill is not the answer, right? We've seen the peak of the Tannehill Titans. So I'm not saying that Tannehill would fail in season enough for them to turn to Kenny Pickett, who I'm making the pick on their behalf. But certainly they can get out of Ryan Tannehill's contract. I think he's due like 27, 28, 29 million next year. And they can get that off the books. Yes, he'll have a cap hit from the restructure and, signing bonus acceleration, whatever. And they could probably trade him. They could probably recoup some assets for him. And then move on to Kenny Pickett, who I think in the structure that offense allows can downplay some of his weaknesses while still allowing his strengths to. He's actually not that. Yeah, there's another quarterback in this class, Matt Corral, who maybe even a better counterpart to Ryan Tannehill if you're talking about a seamless transition. And I think that really if Pickett fell to 26, it might force them into a situation where we didn't really contemplate this because Corral might be the pick. Corral is the one out of Ole Miss who makes sense in that you give him a year. And he's one where one of the biggest questions about him is how would he function outside of the structure that Lane Kiffin created for him? Well, if you have that same structure, a strong structure around him, we'll see. But it also wouldn't surprise me if they do a win now pick, but I think this is a scenario that they're contemplating, and I think it makes sense for them to be the second or third team in the first round to take a quarterback.
All right, Kenny Pickett, quarterback from Pitt to the Titans at 26. That's 27 now, and the Bucks are up, and Matthew Friedman's on the clock.
I'm going Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle out of Georgia, to the Bucks at 27. It's a fairly chalky pick. You see them go either offensive guard or defensive tackle quite often in this spot. And I'd say if not for, Travon Walker, if not for Jordan Davis, more draft picks would be talking about Wyatt. I mean, who, had a good college season, tore up the combine, absolutely tore up the combine, 4.7 second 40-yard dash at 304 pounds. I mean, that's a big boy moving. But the Buccaneers, they need to replace Ndamukong Suh. And Wyatt is a guy who can just slot right in perfectly into that defensive line. So really like him here.
All right, Georgia's defensive tackle Devontae Wyatt to the Bucks at 27. The Packers up again at 28. Andrew Erickson, you already took Treylon Burks for them. What do you take next?
Yeah, this is always the hardest part to do in mock drafts, trying to find the second. You put in the wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. You feel good about it. Like, all right, give Aaron Rodgers a weapon, and then you're like the next pick. You're like, I'm not really sure what to do here. And honestly, mock draft pro tip: when in doubt, just pick someone from Georgia. Hey, they're probably going to go in the first round. So Lewis Seen, safety from Georgia. He was a guy that excelled at the NFL Combine, 95th percentile 40-yard dash, 96th percentile broad jump. So we already saw his stock go up. I've seen him actually getting taken over another safety in this class, Daxton Hill from Michigan, a lot of mock drafts as well. So I think that the Packers, you look at their track record, they don't shy away from investing premier picks in defensive backs. Look last year, who they drafted in the first round, Eric Stokes. Where did he go to school? Georgia. So Georgia, we're going to go with Lewis Seen.
All right, Seen the safety from Georgia. That's two Georgia boys in a row. Excuse me. So the Chiefs are up next with back-to-back picks. Sigmund Bloom, you want to keep the train rolling for Georgia?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Train. Let's go, baby.
Bulldogs. And Kansas City here, again, as I said, I think whatever the draft prop bet is on wide receivers, I don't know if it's 5.5 or 6.5. Obviously 6.5 is a little tougher make, but Kansas City needs a wide receiver. They needed a field tilting wide receiver. They need a wide receiver who can strike fear in the hearts of the opponent. Again, downfield plays, what they're losing with Tyreek Hill. George Pickens makes sense. There's a little bit of risk here medically, but he's that guy who can make those plays. Kind of reminiscent of John Baldwin, which I know won't make Chiefs fans very happy to think about that. But, a long receiver who can make some plays in the air. I think he's more rugged than Baldwin was. But I like the idea here of Pickens as someone where his strengths make a lot of sense for this team, and they can afford to take that risk because of where they are in their Super Bowl arc.
All right, Pickens, a wide receiver from Georgia, goes at 29 to 30. The Chiefs are up again. Matthew Friedman, this pick is yours.
All right, before I get into it, I'm going to filibuster a little bit because I have a question for Erickson, who is quickly becoming my
I hope this isn't about Breece Hall again.
my nemesis. No,
we're past the Breece Hall pick.
We will never be past the Breece Hall thing. No, this has to do with the safety position. I think safety is one of the harder positions to get a read on in general when you're trying to think about scheme fit, because different types of safeties, and they often don't go as high in the draft, and so the further down the draft board you get, the more opportunity there is for chaos. So You took Lewis Seen. Daxton Hill is also on the board at that point when you make that pick. And so I'm curious, a couple of things. One, what is your confidence level in Seen going ahead of Daxton Hill? Because we might have another bet. But then two, why Lewis Seen instead of Daxton Hill?
It's a great question. My confidence level is definitely not nearly on par as it was with Brees Hall, because I could really see it going in either way if they use Daxton Hill and Lewis Seen. I know that when I did my personal mock, Daxton Hill was already off the board, so that is part of the reason why I ended up going with Lewis Seen. And I mean, I really don't have a preference. It really could go either way with either guy. I do think that it depends on the way that they would view Daxton Hill. Now, the Green Bay Packers have a need for a slot cornerback. And so that's what Daxton Hill really basically did last year at Michigan. So if they view him more in their, internal big board, like, oh, Daxton Hill, like, because some people like have Daxton Hill legit as a cornerback, and they're like, oh, we're going to view this guy as a corner. And if that's how the Green Bay Packers view him, then he would make a lot of sense filling in for Chandon Sullivan, to fill in the middle of the defense, working on the inside, because they do need that. But if they are like, no, we actually want like a box hitting safety that's going to be a disruptor in the run game, Lewis Seen is more of that guy. So I think it's more of a coin flip here. And I know that the betting odds are definitely more favored as Daxton Hill as the favorite to be the second safety off the board behind Kyle Hamilton. But I think it's closer than that in terms of more probably like a 40-60 split where it could be seen. And I like that at plus odds in terms of the betting market.
Okay, interesting. I think it would be Daxton Hill ahead of Seen, but again, with safeties, it's hard to know because it's so scheme specific. I am going with the Chiefs at number 30 with Daxton Hill, the safety out of Michigan, and I love this fit for them. Wide receiver, they already addressed that position. I think they're going to go defense with their second pick, and Honey Badger is not returning to the team. And so they have this situation of needing to replace Tyrann Mathieu. And I think that Daxton Hill is one of the few players in this class who has a legitimate chance of actually being able to do that because he's got the versatility. He can play deep as a true safety. He can play in the slot as a nickel corner. So getting him at this point in the draft, I think offers outstanding value. Increasingly, it looks like he's going to go on day one. So perfect fit here. Daxton Hill going to the Chiefs.
All right, the safety from Michigan to the Chiefs at 31. The Bengals are up next. Andrew Erickson, you're on the clock.
I'm going to go with, so the Bengals, I think it's cornerback here. That's really the only position I can think that of like glaring need. Obviously, you could add to the offensive line. You could always add another, pass rusher. I think that those are just kind of best player available picks. But I think from a needs perspective, yeah, they re-signed Eli Apple. They have Ward and Mike Hilton as their two starters, one on the inside and one on the perimeter. Eli Apple was pretty up and down last year. I don't think they want him to be their long-term answer at the position. They signed him a 1-year deal, and we obviously saw in the postseason where he doesn't always, he's not a lockdown corner. So I think that the pick here for me is Kyler Gordon, cornerback from Washington. And, he usually isn't mocked ahead of guys like Kyle Elam and Andrew Booth, but you guys look at the facts. Like there are two cornerbacks that got invited to the draft, Sauce Gardner and Kyler Gordon. Trent McDuffie didn't even get invited to the draft. I mean, the NFL doesn't invite guys that they think aren't going to get drafted in the first round. That doesn't look good for them. So for me, I think Kyler Gordon is going to be a first round pick. I think he's going to go ahead of guys like Booth and Kyrie Elam.
All right. Reading the tea leaves, Kyler Gordon, cornerback from Washington to the Bengals. That puts you to finish us out. Sigmund Bloom, the Detroit Lions at 32. Select who?
Yeah, and I think this is the one that will, on Andrew's note there, embarrass the NFL, as Nakobe Dean was invited to the draft, but instead a different Georgia linebacker will be the final pick of the first round, Quay Walker. And I think this is a good talking point. One of the things I love to say about the draft, guys, is it's an on-ramp to any football conversation. Every football topic intersects in the draft. Mm-hmm. And in this case, let's talk about how the NFL views players as projections and not necessarily their past production. I think that this is a good why Walker over Dean. I think it's just the length, the athletic traits, the size, and that's just more projectable, even though there's versatility in both players. Both players, I think, will be good pros. But when it comes right down to it, Detroit looking for a signature player in the middle of their defense, projecting as I think a middle linebacker for the Lions. And I think we'd all be at the edge of our seat here wondering, will they take one of the quarterbacks Desmond Ritter's name hasn't been called yet. That's going to be another interesting one. Will the NFL blink and give in to quarterback desperation and overlook his warts? Or maybe the joke's on us and Ritter actually ends up being a really good quarterback who falls to the second round. So I think, what we've outlined is it will be an unpredictable first round, except for Breece Hall going to the Bills.
Quay Walker, linebacker from Georgia, rounds things out at 32. Recapping the last few picks, the Green Bay Packers at 22 selected Treylon Burks, wide receiver from Arkansas. Then Jahan Dotson, Penn State wide receiver, goes to the Arizona Cardinals at 23. This seems so long ago. The Dallas Cowboys at 24 selected Kenyon Green. Remember when that happened? The guard from Texas A&M. Then Breece Hall. That happened. Running back Iowa State to the Buffalo Bills. I can't wait for Thursday. At 26, the Tennessee Titans select Kenny Pickett, quarterback from Pittsburgh. Then Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle from Georgia, goes to the Bucs. Then we have the run of Georgia boys. Green Bay Packers select Lewis Cine, safety from Georgia. Then George Pickens, wide receiver from Georgia, goes to Kansas City Chiefs at 29. With their second pick at 30, they take Daxton Hill, safety from Michigan, and Kyler Gordon, corner from Washington, to the Bengals at 31. And finally, Quay Walker, linebacker from Georgia, to Detroit, because you got to finish with another Georgia guy. It's just kind of the way the draft has to go this year. So you can follow Sigmund Bloom on the Twitter machine at Sigmund Bloom. Gentlemen, it was so great to have you here today, all three of you, talking about the draft. And it's just a few days away. We're literally can count the hours now, and make sure you join us on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/FantasyPros. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way, our draft coverage is going to start on Thursday at 7. It's going to go into Friday as well. So we're going to be here for 2 nights live at Fantasy Pros. So it's a perfect second screen experience for you. You can watch the draft and have us there too in the background, breaking it down from a fantasy perspective. And of course, make sure you check out all Sigmund's great work at footballguys.com too. Sigmund, I can't thank you enough for joining us today for the show. And I told you, this is a joy to chat with you guys. And don't forget, when you go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, fantasypros.com/contest, you could get a Lamar Jackson autographed jersey thanks to our friends at Pristine Auctions. So we're basically giving things away so you can watch the draft. It's a pretty good deal as far as I'm concerned. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. From Matthew Friedman, Sigmund Bloom, and Andrew Erickson, I'm Breece Hall. No, wait, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.